Hi there. I just wanted to do a brief follow-up on the group discussion activity that you just completed for the course, the federal courts activity. I was really impressed with some of the work that everybody did on researching the cases, but I realized that I don't think, because there was no rubric before we started the activity and perhaps there was some misunderstanding in my instruction, I wanted to clarify sort of the expectation for we're going to have a few more discussion activities over the semester so that everybody knows what to expect. So this was the activity that we created, and I know that everybody gets very concerned that individual participation can be impacted by the group if there's some individuals that don't do their work. So it is true, if you join into a group and some people don't participate, you won't be penalized for that. However, going forward, it's important that if you divide the labor, so for example, each person takes a slide or takes a case that they should do, there is going to be, from now on I'll be clear, that there will be a couple slides, or if we don't have a slide presentation, if there's just a discussion forum, there will be the requirement that you have some sort of a consensus or some sort of group collaboration on what you come up with together. In this particular project, which we didn't take off any points or anything like that, for this project the idea was for the 6th slide or the 5th slide, where you compare and contrast or show the relationship to the rest of the course material, I wanted all of the group participants to get together and discuss how the cases that you researched were relevant to the course material. And like I said, I think what happened is some of the groups divided up the labor and said, okay, you do this case, this slide, you do this case, this slide, and I'll do the final slide. And I understand, I think that that's how it came out when I gave instructions that you're not penalized by non-participation. However, what I really mean is that if somebody chooses not to participate in the discussion activity, that's their choice, but whoever's left should come together and try to complete the assignment as discussed. And so I did have one group, for example, only 2 people were in the group, and they actually divided up the cases, and then we're going to try to do the 5th and 6th slide together, and that kind of works. So anyway, no penalties for this one. I do want to make sure, though, because of what happened, there were some groups, for example, especially that got Gonzalez versus Reich wrong in terms of not realizing that it did go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court argued in favor of the federal courts. So make sure that you view, if you haven't done so already, Lecture 7, that really does talk about this assignment and shows some examples of some slide presentations from last semester. But the idea of comparing and contrast is that all these cases had to do with federalism and whether or not the application of the Interstate Commerce Clause and whether or not Congress went too far, or whether or not the Congress went too far in applying the Interstate Commerce Clause. So when I say about compare and contrast, the idea is that 2 of the cases really where the Supreme Court came down in favor of saying, you know what, the power should be left with the states, that Congress had gone too far, and then 2 of the cases basically said no, which is Gonzalez versus Reich and Wickard v. Filburn, both sort of argued in favor of that, yes, this was an appropriate use of the Interstate Commerce Clause, and argued in favor of federal power. So just make sure you're clear on that and watch Lecture 7. And then application to the number 6 slide, application to the current course material. You really did need to say something about federalism, Interstate Commerce Clause. Some of you decided to talk about how it went all the way up to the Supreme Court level. All of them did. So just make sure you kind of do make those kinds of connections. Another thing going forward when we have these kinds of discussion activities, it's very useful, and I have this example up here, that this group, which is group 11, they put all of their discussion under one thread. It makes it much easier and much more like a dialogue. So in this one, if you click on it, the entire thread is under one discussion. You can see it scroll down, and it makes more of a conversational dialogue. So you should try and do that when you have your discussion activities. The other thing I wanted to show you is the rubric, which is on the main Moodle page, and the rubric for the group discussion activities. Because I don't think I made it very clear. So that's why for this first assignment that we did, that you just completed, we're seeing this as sort of a setting up for future activities. So the rubric for further discussion activities is that it's what they call mostly connected ways of knowing. versus separate and connected versus separate ways of knowing. So when we get discussion activities from now on, they'll usually put them in a group. We have a very large class, and it allows for a smaller number of students to be able to discuss things. So usually there'll be some sort of a question or something that you have to discuss, and then you have to arrive at some sort of group consensus. It won't always be a PowerPoint presentation. It may just be a group consensus as required. So for individual contribution, if you are an individual and you contribute to the discussion forum in the form of a slide or a posting on a topic, but you don't really demonstrate your personal reflection using the course material to support the claims, you would get separate ways of knowing. Obviously, if you don't participate at all, you don't get any credit. If you're the individual and you contribute to the discussion forum in the form of a slide or in the posting on the topic, and you have personal reflection on the question or subject with reference or appropriate reference to the course material, then you would get separate and connected ways of knowing, which means that you've shown some understanding of the material and you understand the question. But in order to get mostly connected ways of knowing, where you've shown understanding of the material, you've done your individual contribution to your posting, but then you've also contributed to the group consensus, some sort of discussion and collaboration in terms of demonstrating your understanding of how your contribution relates to others' contributions. Well, that's mostly connected ways of knowing. So you would get full credit for the assignment. And like I said, there's a few discussion activities, and in the end, it all comes together to create, I think it's 10% of your grade. So if you do a pretty good job coming through all these and you participate in them or participate well in them, you would get your full credit. Some students have asked about the general discussion board, and if you go back to here, back into the beginning, the general discussion board, and some of you are doing a really great job on that, is a place. So say, for example, you're worried about your participation and you're thinking, I'm not sure if I'm doing a great job in these discussion activities, or I want to ensure that I get my full 10 points. Or you're just really interested in the subject matter and you care. There's this general discussion board right here. And this is for sort of extra participation credit. And several of you have basically come in here and which is awesome. You've actually found different articles, stuff going on in the real world that you found ties to the current material. So it's great. I'm really impressed, and everybody's really making some good points. So please do that, because I think we all can learn from it. And this is also another way to effectively add to, contribute to your participation grade. Last but not least, the purpose of that last assignment that we just did was to, it's not last but not least, but the purpose of the assignment that we just did was also to get you ready for the exclusionary rule, which is coming up, which I have opened it. The exclusionary rule is right down here. And I've posted the exclusionary rule activity, so hopefully you guys have looked at it. It's right here on the main Moodle page under police activity exclusionary rule, 15 points due February 27th. If you open it, just before I open it, here's where the groups are listed. Some of you already started getting ready. Please take a look at the exclusionary rule assignment. If you'll notice that your first posting is on February 16th, you should have entered into the form. Some of you already done that. And you have to create your Google presentation by February 18th. So part of the reason to do that last assignment on federal and state courts was so that not only to prepare you for the quiz, but also so that you can get ready for doing some of this group work for the larger assignments that are worth 15% of your grade. For the exclusionary rule, like I said, we have some extra TAs. We're very lucky to have these TAs working with us, and they are going to enter into your group discussion forum, and they'll be introducing themselves so that you know which TA is working with you, and also giving you a heads up on, say you should be getting started, making sure everything's set up, and letting you know that you've got your first entry by February 16th. So take a look, be ready for your TAs to introduce themselves so that you know who'll be working with you on this assignment. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about plagiarism. We did have a couple students that, and this is actually a problem with online courses, especially open book, open note work, is that students that cut and pasted from websites, from Wikipedia or whatever, into their PowerPoint presentations. Also, we've had this in the past where students have cut and pasted from the PowerPoint slides that I post from websites, from Wikipedia, from other sites, and posted them into their quizzes and finals. It's on the syllabus that you can't plagiarize. You cannot copy and paste and not cite. And as we all know, that if you do this, it is grounds for failure of the course. So please don't. If you are going to, for example, if you get a quiz and you have in your notes that you've taken notes on the PowerPoint slides, make sure that it's your own language, so that you're not copying and pasting from PowerPoints, from websites, from Wikipedia. You just don't want to end up in that scenario. If there are any other questions, please let us know, and I'm looking forward to having us go forward with the exclusionary rule assignment. Thanks very much.